Chapter 5. Word of our engagement spread like a brush fire, both at work and at church. The girls in the office noticed the ring first. I was talking and gestured with my hands when Danielle caught my left one.
Whoa! What do we have here? Is that something you'd like to share?
Not particularly, I teased, trying in vain to tug my hand loose.
Hey, everybody! Nina's engaged!
She called out. The women gathered around, all 5 of them, along with my boss and one of the other male supervisors. So you and Ron patched things up? Angela said. I almost cursed at her and quickly bit back the first words that came to mind. No! Why would you think such a thing? Well, y'all have been spending time together, she defended. Gloria said, Anyone with eyes can see she and Ron aren't together. Now, Timothy, that's a different story. I always suspected there was more going on there than just friendship. I yanked my hand loose and placed it on my waist. Gloria, you need to ease up on the dye. Timothy didn't give me this. My fiancé's name is Roberto, I teased, rolling the R in Roberto's name. The guys laughed and walked off while the women cooed, Ooh, Roberto. Feeling my face burn, I knew I was blushing. I spent the next 15 minutes answering questions about him before the boss made us all get back to work. It didn't take long for the news to spread. All day long, guys, even those who rarely came upstairs, stopped by to offer congratulations. Quite a few mentioned Ron. I played dumb, and since most of the men didn't know me that well, they were afraid to really push for more information. The ones that touched my heart were the guys who state they'd always known I could do better than Ronald, and from the looks of my ring, it seemed I had. They also said I was a good woman, and wished me all the happiness in the world. I was floored, never having suspected these guys thought so highly of me. Just goes to show you never know who's watching you and what conclusions they're drawing. At church, it was almost comical, the reaction the news brought. There were those who stated it was only a matter of time. They could see the writing on the wall, as it were, and had millions of questions and suggestions. Then there were the females who smiled and cooed and stated how happy they were for me, while all the while their eyes proclaimed what liars they were. They were as jealous as could be. The rest of the congregation, those with lives who didn't have time or energy to be concerned with my love life, wished us happy and kept going on about their business. Roberto and I dutifully appeared for the monthly marriage ministry program. The topic for May was the 4 seasons of marriage, and the speaker was one of the older women in our church who'd been married to her husband for over 50 years. It was, interesting. No earth-shattering revelations, but it proved if you put your mind to it and kept God first, marriage could be happy, satisfying, and most importantly, lasting. Time took wings and flew. School let out and there was a whirlwind of happy activity as I packed the twins up for the summer. I loved this time of year. 8 weeks with no children. Rather than missing them, the time usually went by so fast they were home before I had a chance to adjust to them being gone. I was going to have to be extra vigilant this summer. Summertime was when I'd gotten myself into so much trouble with Ronald, spending more time at his home than my own until we inevitably became lovers. If I didn't want Roberto's and my relationship suffering the same fate, I'd have to be more diligent to ensure we didn't cross any lines now that our 2 young chaperones were vacating the premises. Friday, when it was time to meet Tyrone, Roberto drove with me. Actually, we took his SUV. The halfway point where we were to meet was near a small island town. After dropping the kids off, Roberto and I were going into the town to eat dinner and walk on the beach in the moonlight. When Tyrone arrived, he gave Roberto a hard look. Nothing was overlooked. Not the vehicle, Roberto's manner toward me, He noticed everything. Seeing as this was the first time since our separation and subsequent divorce he'd ever seen me with another man, I expected it. We did our normal nod and wave as the twins transferred their belongings from one vehicle to the other. When the last goodbyes were made and Tyrone drove away, I looked at Roberto and cried, "Yes! Freedom!" Roberto chuckled.
If I didn't know better, I'd think you were glad to be rid of your children.
I leaned back in the seat with a relieved sigh. Ugh, I love them dearly, but summertime belongs to me. I look forward to it every year.
You know, you're very fortunate to get the breaks you do. Most single parents don't.
He said as he pulled out of the McDonald's parking lot. I know. That's one good thing I can say about Tyrone. He exercises his visitation rights. Although the kids are more likely to be at his mom's house than his, I'm glad they're growing up knowing both sides of their family. I watched the trees give way to houses and businesses, noting the changes since I'd been here last.
He has a lot of family in the area?
Oh yeah, almost a whole county full. Great-grandparents, grandparents, both paternal and maternal. Aunts, uncles, and assorted cousins, all living in the same small county. It's like a family reunion for the twins every time they're there. Not to mention, Bree and Brendan were the first grandchildren. I call them the golden ones. In their grandparents' eyes, they can do no wrong and get spoiled rotten. When they were younger, every time they returned home, I had to remind them that they were in Florida now, not Georgia, and I ran things differently. I finished with a laugh.
I know about that. When I got out of the military, the boys spent a lot of time with me. I constantly had to remind them the things Peg allowed them to do weren't tolerated when with me. Caused a bit of tension until they settled down. When they got older, they actually preferred living with me.
Roberto said. We talked about the challenges of being parents and trying to raise children for the rest of the evening. We agreed on a lot of things. Roberto was a bit more adventurous than I. I was protective of my kids. Not overly so, I didn't think, but definitely more cautious. There was so much out there to be concerned about, more so than when I was growing up. Yes, I prayed and trusted God to keep my children safe. Otherwise, I'd be a total nutcase and never let them out of the house. But I still had a responsibility to use my own judgment and make sound decisions. Both Roberto and I were the disciplinarians in our homes. That led to a conversation of who would be doing what concerning the twins once we married and lived in the same household. With Tyrone, I made all the decisions. He didn't have the backbone required to be firm with them, even when they were toddlers. Even now, they know if they pester him enough, he'll cave on whatever decision he's made and give them what they want, I said, my disgust showing.
Ronald? What arrangement did you have with him?
Roberto asked, looking intrigued. We didn't discuss it, but I was never comfortable with the idea of him telling my children what to do. Maybe if he'd bothered to form some type of relationship with them, I would have tolerated it. As it was, I would have still made the rules and been the disciplinarian. All I wanted him to do was back me up. As my husband, the twins would have had to respect his position in our family as the head of household. But he wasn't their father, nor did I intend to make them treat him like he was.
I see.
We walked farther along the beach in silence, holding hands.
What about me? How do you see my role with the children?
Roberto asked. I kept quiet as I thought things through. Finally, Roberto drew me to a stop and pulled me into his arms. I guess he thought I wasn't going to answer him.
Nina?
I put my arms around his neck and leaned into him, listening to the peaceful sound of the waves on the shore. It was low tide, there was a nice breeze, and the moon was full. In other words, the ultimate romantic setting. I was thinking, the twins already respect and recognize you as an authority figure in their lives. I just realized I trust you with them. I don't have a problem with you telling them what to do because I know you have their best interests at heart. As long as we make decisions together, and you consult me before overriding any decision I've made, I think it will be okay." I laid my head on his chest, wondering if Roberto realized just how big of a concession I'd made. I let very few people tell my children what to do, including my mother. The twins knew not to disrespect any adult authority figure, but my word was law, always and without exception. Even my mother, Ms. Control Everything and Everyone, had learned when it came to my children to say, "Ask your mother." He kissed me.
Thank you. I know how much that means. You're very protective of your children. That you trust me with them humbles me.
"Do you think I'm too protective?" I asked, biting my lips. Roberto's hand slid down to cup my butt and pull me closer into him.
Not at all. You're not like some of the women in the church who don't allow anyone to correct their children. You've taught them to be respectful to all adults. People know they can't simply say or do anything to the twins without justification, or they'll answer to you. On the flip side, if it's the twins in the wrong, you swiftly deal with them.
Sighing in relief, I said, "Good. I worry sometimes. It's hard being both mother and father."
Soon, I'll be able to help. We'll ease into it. Find a balance everyone can live with. You're their mother, and I'll back you up all the way. If I think you're wrong, we'll discuss it in private and present it to the kids together. Okay?
He leaned back a little so he could see my face. "That works for me." We walked a while longer in silence before the salt air had me yawning.
I'd better get you home.
It's the ocean. It relaxes me," I explained. We drove the long way home along the ocean with the windows down and jazz playing softly on the radio. By the time we pulled into my driveway, I was as relaxed as a piece of cooked spaghetti. "You coming in?" I asked, around another yawn.
Not tonight. Come here.
He gave my arm a tug and laid a kiss on me that showed, while I was thinking pleasant thoughts of bed and rest, his were a bit more earthy. All thoughts of sleep forgotten, I threw myself wholeheartedly into the embrace. Hands clutched and groped as we leaned into each other. Roberto had bucket seats, which made the whole process a bit uncomfortable, until with a growl of dissatisfaction, he slid his seat back as far as it would go and pulled me onto his lap, in almost the same motion. I moaned my approval. By the time we came up for air, my blouse was unbuttoned and bra open. Good thing I didn't have on a skirt. As it was, the top button of my capris was undone, and the zip lowered before I came to my senses enough to call a halt. Well, I didn't exactly come to my senses. What really happened is I ran out of air and needed to breathe. My question proved I still wasn't thinking straight. "Are you sure you don't want to come into the house?" Roberto groaned and leaned his head back against the seat, breathing heavily.
The house won't be the only thing I'll be inside of if I do,
he murmured. It was a testament to how far gone I was that his declaration of intent sounded good. Roberto straightened my clothes while I tried to gather my scattered wits.
Go in the house, honey, before I further forget myself.
He opened his door and hastened me outside the vehicle, pushing my purse into my hands. I took out my keys, still a bit dazed. The man affected me like a spark to gasoline. Not good for a woman determined to remain celibate until her wedding night. "Good night," I called from the doorway.
Good night.
He waited until I was inside with the door closed, to start his SUV and drive off. I've long thought it unfair that it was up to the female to set the boundaries in a relationship, even as a teenager. A male was expected, no, encouraged to see how far he could go and to get as much sex as he could with no recriminations. Females, however, were tasked with maintaining their virtue, no matter what the provocation or temptation. It sucked. I blame Eve. Most male theologians charged Eve with tempting Adam away from what he knew to be right and true, using her feminine wiles to do so. I heard Kenneth Copeland, a minister I particularly admire, state in one of his messages that if you read what the Bible said, and not what you wanted it to state, you'd see Adam was right there with Eve the whole time the serpent was speaking to her. Paul also stated in the New Testament, Eve was deceived, but Adam wasn't. He knew what God said, but willingly gave up his God-given authority to follow his woman's lead. Men have been following women ever since. All this meant was it was my responsibility to make sure Roberto and I didn't cross any lines and fall into sexual sin. Not an easy task when the man could make me burn with a look. It was only my desire to receive God's blessing on our union helping me to hold back. Did I want him? Oh yeah, with every fiber of my being. I couldn't be around him without my senses humming. Knowing he wanted me in the same manner was like an aphrodisiac to my sex-deprived body. It kept me constantly on my knees, praying not only for the strength to resist temptation, but not to be the source of one as well. I knew me. The urge to tempt, to tease, and to see how far I could push was always present. I wanted to touch, to taste, to nibble, and pretty much see what it would take to drive Roberto crazy. Mostly, I wanted to please him, in and out of bed. The Lord must have heard my prayers, because in our next session, Pastor brought up sex.
Nina, your children are gone for the summer?
Yes, sir.
Roberto, you live alone. This is correct?
Pastor asked.
Yes.
Pastor drilled us both with his gaze.
So, now you both are alone with no chaperones. Are you having sex?
I almost choked on the blunt and completely unexpected question. My first instinct was to say, that's none of your business. But, of course, as our spiritual leader, it was. Besides, doing so would have made us appear guilty. I leaned back in my chair and turned my gaze on Roberto, letting him be the one to answer.
No, we aren't.
He firmly replied.
And how do you avoid temptation?
Pastor Williams inquired. Roberto smiled at me.
Nina keeps me in line.
I smiled back, amused, remembering a few times when Roberto called a halt to things because I was unable.
And Sister Nina, how are you able to be so strong?
My smile faded. My desire for God's blessing on our union is stronger than the desire to satisfy my flesh, I responded, briefly remembering the last time I'd allowed my flesh to rule and the resulting disaster and heartache. Even so, we pray for strength and try to avoid putting ourselves in situations where temptation can get the better of us.
I see.
Pastor studied both of us, as though weighing whether or not we spoke the truth.
Some couples feel as long as they don't engage in actual intercourse, everything else is sanctioned, including oral sex. What is your opinion?
My opinion is I did not want to be having this conversation, not now and not with Pastor. Again, I deferred to Roberto, allowing him to speak for us.
I teach the kids as Christians there are lines that shouldn't be crossed, and that some acts are only meant for the marriage bed, oral sex being one of them.
Roberto said. Pastor turned to me.
And you, Sister Nina?
I could have prettied it up and gave a spiritual answer, but decided instead to be my usual blunt self. I can't answer for everyone, but as for myself, if things got that far, I wouldn't have the willpower to keep it from going all the way, so, for me, oral sex is still sex, I concluded.
And have you two discussed your sexual expectations after marriage? A lot of couples don't, and it ends up being a major source of contention, especially if one partner desires a greater frequency than the other, or if one is more adventurous.
I shifted uncomfortably in my seat and refused to look at Roberto. Talking about sex was too much like doing it to me. That's not a conversation I saw us having anytime soon, at least not face to face, and definitely not late at night on the phone while lying in bed. Jeez, I was getting wet just thinking about it.
We haven't, but we will.
Roberto assured him. I bit back a groan. I could almost hear Roberto's deep voice asking, "Do you like it when I do this? What if I were to do that? Tell me how to please you." I jerked my attention back to hear Pastor saying,
Another major source of dissension is children from previous relationships. How will you two handle disciplining of the twins?
This I knew from my divorce to Tyrone. Stepchildren were the number 2 cause of divorce, with finances being number 1. Fortunately, we'd already worked out a game plan.
Nina?
Roberto prompted. We discussed this the other night. We'll make decisions together. If Roberto feels the need to override a decision I've made, he'll discuss it with me first, in private. To the kids, we'll present a united front, I explained.
Also, I'll ease into it. Give the children a chance to get used to me as a paternal figure in their lives. Until they're ready, I'll be Nina's support and reinforcement.
Roberto said.
And if there's a disagreement, who has the final say?
Pastor asked. I do, I thought. They're my kids. What I said, however, was, "Are you speaking about the children or in general?" Pastor's eyebrows rose again.
Aren't they one and the same?
No,
How so?
Pastor asked. I clarified. When it comes to Bree and Brendan, I'm the final authority. The same as when it comes to Roberto's boys. He is.
And if you have children together?
My startled gaze immediately jumped to Roberto's. I didn't want more children. The twins were 13, soon to be 14. Starting over with babies and diapers was not in my plans. My tubes are tied, I informed both of them.
God can do all things, sister.
Pastor sagely replied. He'd better not undo my surgery, I vehemently thought.
We'll pray about it.
Roberto said calmly. I narrowed my eyes at him. There was nothing to pray about. I wasn't having another baby. That was final. I sat inwardly fuming while Pastor read a few scriptures about children being a blessing and the importance of family. Then we prayed, and he once again admonished us to attend the marriage ministry before dismissing us.